Hi, welcome to another Seqtrak video. If you have seen my previous video, first of all, thank you very much. Second of all, you probably noticed that I really like Seqtrak. I have been having a lot of fun with it lately. I think it's an incredible device. There are some weird design choices here and there, but I think it's really easy to get used to. I made some minor adjustments to improve my experience to make music without relying on the app. You can see them here actually. I just put some labels on the sound categories because it's a lot of them. And also on the right side, I marked the key and the scale and the octave range. This makes it easier for me to find my way around without looking at the app screen. As I mentioned in the video, app is really good, but it's not necessary. This is a great standalone device, except maybe one thing which I will mention in a second. So I made a list of useful tips if you are just starting out with Seqtrak, or maybe you're experienced, but some of them you might not have realized before. Some of these are from the manual, might be overlooked. Some of them are the things that you already know. This is why I mark everything on the timeline you can find below. Please feel free to jump to the section that you find interesting. We will begin with the simple shortcut and tricks, then jump to a tiny bit more advanced workflow, which I will need to have external support. Just a reminder, I have some cable clutter around here. It looks a little messy. I apologize for that. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with these cables. Second, some of these tricks and shortcuts I will mention will require the latest firmware, but I'm sure you are already on it. Lastly, I will use my iPad towards the end, but it's not for the Seqtrak app. I will use other music making apps that I have. Spoiler alert, Koala Sampler and stuff. But feel free to exchange it with whatever device you have. You don't need an iPad to replicate what I'm gonna do in this video. Without wasting your time, let's get into it because it will be a long video. Tip number 1, downloading additional sounds and packs. I think some people decided to get rid of the app entirely and never install it in the first place, but I think it's really useful. Even if you're not gonna use the app while making music, you can still download a lot of great packs. As you know, Seqtrak comes with fantastic sounds, thousands of them, but the app offers even more. Let me show you how you do it. What you need to do is go to Project Sound Manager, and in this page, you will see two tabs, My Seqtrak and Additional. You can see that all your sounds that is on Seqtrak right now already categorized on the left side, the kick, snare, and then you have synths for bass and synth lead and piano and all sorts of things. If you click on the Additional tab, you will see that there are a lot of packs. You can still filter things by the category like one shot, kick, snare, and clap. Also, you can download entire packs by the genre. For instance, let's go to techno, ambient analog techno 2, analog and modular techno, deep techno, dub techno, future techno rave. There are a lot of packs here. So let's say you want to listen to these. Let's go to the kicks. Either I can download them one by one, clicking on this load button. It's downloaded to my device now, or I can click load all and it will download all these sounds very quickly. Actually, it's only gonna take 30 seconds and all of this will be loaded to my device. There's one thing to mention, all of these downloaded additional packs will go to the favorites category. You will need to manually remove them from the favorites, but please definitely make sure that you check these additional sounds. Also, another good thing is some of these packs come with their own projects. So you can actually listen to what kind of sounds these artists made with these packs. Make sure to check it. Tip number 2, setting the BPM without the app. There are not many things on Seqtrak that you cannot do without the app, but unfortunately, setting a precise BPM is one of them. The workaround here is to reset the BPM and count it up or down. If you press BPM minus and plus at the same time, it will reset your BPM to 120. The trick is, the first time you press the BPM, it will activate the BPM setting. So it's not going to count as plus or minus. Let's say, without looking at the screen, I want to set it to 132. Let's see if I can make it. Press once, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 132. It's really awkward. This should have been basic. If you need to set the BPM, reset it to 120 first, then count it up or down. If you're producing house, good for you, but I hope you are not producing breakcore. But in any case, use the app on your phone, folks. It's really not that bad. Tip number 3, programming your beats and synths in multiple bars. This is really useful. Let me demonstrate. By default, Seqtrak will give you 1 bar, 16 steps, but you can go up to 8 bars and 128 steps. To be able to change that, you click the page. Let's say, let's go to kick. You click the page and you press and hold the kick and then bring it to the bar value on the meter. In this case, I want to have a 4-bar loop. The problem with this is if I make a drum pattern, I will need to do it for every page individually. However, let's delete this and let's bring back the bar to 1. If I first make the drum pattern, then multiply it to 4 bars, you will see that all the kick drums I put on the first bar will copy it into every other bar. This makes it much easier to make variations in your patterns, which leads to tip number 4, copy and paste patterns. This is from the manual, but I think it's really important to memorize because it's very, very useful. It really speeds things up. This only works between drum and synth tracks, not from drum tracks to synth tracks or vice versa. This is important to know. Just to demonstrate it simply, let's say I have a clap pattern and I want to have the exact same pattern on the snare track. What I will do is press and hold clap and then select the pattern I want to copy. In this case, it's the pattern 1. Press and hold and you will see that the meter is flashing. Now I can go to snare. Now press and hold snare, press and hold page and press the pattern. You will see that it's flashing. Now it's pasted. Just to remember, copy will make the meter flash. Paste will make the pattern flash. You might think that you can simply just put the same exact pattern that you have in clap and snare, but the good thing is copying patterns pastes everything that you made on that pattern. Everything you changed will be copied, like parameter logs, the variations you make, micro timings, motion recording, which is really useful and saves a lot of time. At the same time, if you made some unique changes to a step, not a track, not a pattern, but to an individual step, you can also copy and paste that. Let's say I have this very basic kick and the last kick, I want to change the pitch a little bit. Press and hold. I change the pitch, you will hear the difference. And now I want to double the last kick. I can just press and hold. Meter flashed. I will press and hold page and paste it here. You can see that I pasted here with the same modifications and you will hear the difference again. Again, if it's just a kick, simple, 4 on the floor, it might not make a lot of sense, but imagine you can apply this to shaker patterns. Tip number 5. You probably know that you can program your synths just like you program your drums, step by step. The great thing is it doesn't have to be note or chord programs. It can actually be both at the same time. Let me show you how it is. Let's get a piano sound. Very basic. And also I can make a chord out of it. In this case, I will make a pattern combining both keys and chords at the same time. To do that, you program one or the other first. If you're on the drum tracks already, you can see these yellow things indicate the drums. You can press page and go to synths. It's not going to give you any indication, but this is where you program your keys. For instance, I can program everything. Now I can add a chord in this mixture just simply by changing it to chord mode. Choose a chord and drop it on the last key and listen how it sounds now. This way you can add some different movement to your tracks, I think. I find it quite useful. Speaking of step sequencing, tip number 6, making triplets and stuff. Now that I have a very simple snare groove going, I will add some triplets and stuff at the end. What you need to do is just hold down the step that you want to add. You can press and hold for 2 seconds. In this case, you can see you have 5 keys coming up, lit up as white. The first one is the default 16th note. And then from here, it goes on to the fifth button to create triplets and stuff. I say triplets and stuff because I don't know how you call the other stuff, but it's pretty cool. Let's try one. Or we can change it to something even faster just to see. It's very useful, especially if you are producing hip hop, trap, or R&B and other things. Tip number 7, unmute everything. To demonstrate that, I'm going to need to switch to a different project that I already have some elements going. If you have multiple tracks muted, especially in different parts like kick, snare, and clap here, and on the synth you have maybe the X and sampler, it's really difficult to press and hold mute and then unmute multiple fingers, especially when you want to bring all of these tracks at the same time. If you have more than one element muted, pressing and holding mute and pressing alt unmutes everything at the same time without muting other elements. Now I have the loop going. I will mute all these tracks. And I can bring them back at the same time using this only. It unmutes everything at the same time, which is quite useful, again, as I mentioned, if you have multiple tracks muted at the same time. Tip number 8. Do the most without a MIDI controller. Once you start sequencing the steps of your synth tracks, you can also change the note length of each step, which is really useful to create longer notes and sustain without actually playing every note and chords while recording. Let me show you how it is. Just 2 chords, and I want to extend them to have some kind of sustain. I just need to press and hold the step I want to extend, and then turn the knob. All knob, by the way, not the synth knob. And let's say I want to extend the other one too. You can see that when I do this, things light up, but also you can press and hold any knob, because when you press and hold the knob, it makes that action faster. If you just twist the knob, it changes the parameters slowly. If you press and twist, then it changes those parameters faster. And now let's listen to how it sounds. For instance, if you want to manually arpeggiate a melody, then in that case, you can apply this technique to define the length of your notes. Okay, now let's move on to the second half of the tips, which will require my iPad to be connected to Seqtrak. But as I mentioned, not for the Seqtrak app, but I will try to use some other music making apps that I think really useful. You can also try this with your laptop or smartphone. Probably your smartphone or iPad will be a better choice in this case. And let me show you why. Tip number 9, stop your smart device charging Seqtrak. I don't know if you realized this before, but every time you connect your USB-C cable between Seqtrak and iPad, iPad actually acts as the host and charges your Seqtrak. It will kill your iPad or your phone rather quickly. I didn't realize it at first. I think it's a good info if you didn't notice this until now. To stop your iPad charging the Seqtrak, you can use either a powered USB hub or a specific charge blocking adapter. In this case, I have a really generic powered USB hub. I will use this on the iPad. Then I would charge the iPad using the power delivery port, and I would connect my Seqtrak to one of the other ports that you can see here. This definitely solves the problem. Another thing that you can use, as I mentioned, is the charge blocking cable, but that is really specific. I am not sure how easy it is to find. It looks like a simple USB-C adapter. It will let all the data being passed through to the iPad, but it will not let the iPad charge the Seqtrak. Let me show you how it works with and without it. I connect the USB-C to Seqtrak and the iPad, and you can see that it's charging. But if I use the adapter on Seqtrak, then connect the Seqtrak to the charge blocking adapter, I don't see any indication. So this is not charging at the moment. I will turn on the Seqtrak now just to show you that the data is actually working. It's connected now. The charge blocker cable in between and USB-C is going to the iPad. And now I am connected to my Seqtrak without it being charged. Tip number 10, playing samples chromatically. First of all, why? Because in some instances, you might want a certain sound, like a bass sound. All your synth tracks and the X track is already occupied. Your options are to create the bass line, resample it to a sample track, and use that sample track as your bass line to free up that bass synth track that you created it with. But it has a lot of downsides because of the limitations around the sampling on Seqtrak. For instance, one of them is BPM sync. If you created your resampled track on 120 BPM, if you decide to change it to 125, your resampled bass line will be out of sync, which is a bummer. But if you use that bass line in one of these drum tracks, which is the only way as of now to play samples chromatically, then you can sacrifice one of your drum tracks, like one of the percussions, let's say, to free up one of your synth tracks. But the problem here is that you need a MIDI controller, which is first another expense, second is another thing to carry. But if you already have a smartphone with a MIDI app that is connected to your Seqtrak, it's actually quite easy. Let me show you how it is. For this purpose, you can use literally any app that is capable of sending MIDI. In this case, I will use Grooverider 2 because I know how to send MIDI with it, but you could use Koala Sampler, which I will also get to that in a bit, or any other MIDI app basically that lets you play on screen keyboards, but also lets you choose a specific MIDI channel. Because Seqtrak works with specific MIDI channels that you cannot change on device. For instance, kick is MIDI channel 1, and then snare is 2, and it goes on like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and on the synth tracks, it goes 8, 9, and 10 for DX, and 11 for sampler. And you cannot change this. So you have 11 MIDI channels to work with. This will also come handy the other way around, which we'll talk about just in a few minutes. Right now, I'm going to set up Grooverider 2 to send MIDI on MIDI channel 7. I will go to part 7. In this case, MIDI channel sends to 7, but I can just choose to 7 just to make sure. And this is the sound that I want to get. Especially if you're not good with music theory and if you don't know how to play the keyboard, you can lock it to scale. Let's see what is my scale. C Dorian, let's bring it to Lydian. Now I can use the on-screen keyboard to record my bass line using the percussion track, which is chromatic. There's one thing to note that this is going to be monophonic, so you cannot load a piano sample and create chords in the percussion track. This is usually good for leads, melodies, arps, or most importantly, bass line. There is one last important thing that if you are doing this, you should make sure that the Seqtrak is also not sending MIDI information. This is causing a lot of problems. You can change this behavior using the app or whatever host app you are using that you're going to send MIDI information to Seqtrak. You can disable Seqtrak as a MIDI device. Now I turned on the metronome and I will record the bass line live.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is the only way as of now to play the chromatic samples without an external MIDI controller. Technically, an iPad is your external MIDI controller, but you can use your phone. But in any case, to play samples chromatically, you will need an external device. In this case, it's a little bit easier. Tip 11, send advanced MIDI to Seqtrak. As I mentioned, you can use any app that can send MIDI data and MIDI clock, but it really helps if this app also supports AUV extensions, because this is where it shines, because you can use MIDI generators like pagiators, chord generators, or create very well-designed chord progressions, especially if you're not a musician like me. It really helps. Usually it's really difficult for me to create some chord progressions that sounds pleasing to me while also creating some kind of emotion, surprise, suspense. Because of that, I love generative apps. Let's see what Spacewalk does. Dreamy and ethereal, Lydian. And I will drop to 8 bars because this is the maximum amount of bars I can record on Seqtrak. Let's change the synth bar length to 8 and bars chord to 2 bars. And in this case, every 2 bars will be a chord change. You don't have to know the music theory to understand what's going on. You can just simply randomize it or choose a character or a preset, let's say. Now I'm going to change the richness to 9s. I can simply record this as MIDI. Another thing why I mentioned in the beginning that it should be able to sync and transport. If I click record, this will already start playing. I don't need to do anything else.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's pretty cool. And I know that Seqtrak has its own chord mode. It also has some chord packs that you can choose from, but in any case, you have to figure out the progression. But if you use a chord progression generator app, you can already get a little inspired to do something different, something unique, something you wouldn't think by yourself. My iPad is running out of battery. I told you it's a long video. Also, it's good that I just apologize in advance for the cable clutter, but I really have to charge it now. Now slowly going to the end, tip number 12, pairing Seqtrak with Koala Sampler. I will show you in which way you can utilize Koala Sampler with Seqtrak. I think you might like this one. It's actually very simple. You need to go to settings and change a few things. First, let's go to settings and the audio. Let's set Seqtrak as the audio input. This will come handy in a bit. And on the MIDI, and check MIDI clock mode, receive. If I set it to receive, transport and clock will come from Seqtrak, which in this case will act as the master. First of all, Seqtrak controls the play pause function and MIDI sync, like for instance, BPM. If I change the BPM on Seqtrak, you can see that Koala Sampler BPM is changing also. I think the most amazing thing with Seqtrak is that it acts as a really nice sound card, especially with Koala Sampler. It is really nice and convenient to use because the audio goes both ways. You can sample things from Seqtrak to Koala Sampler because this is already an incredible sound module, but also you can use Koala Sampler to sample things into Seqtrak. This opens up a lot of possibilities, especially in the sound design region, because Koala is insanely flexible. I think it doesn't need any introduction. It's an entirely different world compared to how limited the Seqtrak sampler is. You can create one-shots, vocal chops, or lush pads in Koala Sampler as long as they are 16 seconds, but more on that later. But at the same time, you can replace the sampling function altogether with Koala Sampler. I will show you how it's done, but before that, let me show you how Seqtrak makes it incredibly easy to use Koala Sampler. So I have Koala Sampler on the right and the web page on the left side. I'm going to sample from this side to this side. I know that usually you can just record a video, then import it in Koala Sampler, and it's a really clever workaround. It's a really handy feature. But since we have Seqtrak connected, it's much better than that. It might be a little loud, apologies. Let's edit this a little bit. Now I can crop it and I can also stretch it to the bars that I want. Let's split stems. Other split. I think this should get rid of all the percussions towards the end. If I have stretch enabled, now it's gonna also sync the Seqtrak BPM to this sample. One thing to know is to change the MIDI channel to something else. I will also mention that in a bit. I'm gonna create a really simple rhythm with some shakers to show you how good this sync up. I think you got the idea. It's amazing how much flexibility you can get out of Koala Sampler already, but once you think about the possibilities around Seqtrak with Koala Sampler, I think it's an incredible pair. Also, just because I mentioned, I can show you how easy it is to sample things from Seqtrak to Koala Sampler. Let's say on the Seqtrak, I want some kind of, I don't know, some kind of electric piano maybe. And let's switch it to chord mode. Now I can click this. It's amazing. Not only an amazing sound module, but also a pretty convenient sound card. So now that I mentioned Koala Sampler and the workflow and how good it is playing samples, let's talk about another tip. Tip number 13, replace Seqtrak Sampler with Koala Sampler. It's very easy. There are two things you need to do. First, let's go to Koala Sampler settings. What I like to do in this case to use the first 7 pads on Koala Sampler as the sampler pads and use the bottom row as sound design and sample creation pads, let's say. Let's go to sampler channel just to make sure. Click on sampler and we have all these 7 sampler keys in this case. Map MIDI and click this. And let's do this. You can map it however you like, but I prefer to lay them out in order. Maybe if it's easier for you, we don't have to do it my way. Let's say this one is this. And let's go in order. You can hear that every time I click a sample key, it also plays the sample sound. Okay, now everything is mapped here in the same formation that we have the sampler keys here. Let's put some sounds just for testing purposes. Samples, basic, drum hits, just one bass drum, and the shaker. We can cut the volume a little bit, but no need to get into the sound design now. You can see that if I use the sampler key on Seqtrak, it will trigger Koala, but there's already a sample there. As far as I know, there's no way to delete samples from Seqtrak. You can only record on top. It's really simple. I'm gonna click on it and I'm gonna turn down the volume for each sample track. Now, when I press, these keys will only trigger Koala Sampler. Technically, they still play the sound in the sample key, but since the volume is 0, it will only act as a MIDI sequencer. So make sure that you turn down the volume before you sequence anything, or don't. It's entirely up to you, depending on your creative process. The same way I sequenced the synth tracks on the drum keys, I'm gonna do the same. If it's not already enabled, you can press page and sampler. Right now, if you see yellow, it means that it's working on a drum track. I press and hold page, click on the sampler, and this one is selected, means that this is going to be sequenced. Let's go to the second note, and you can see that sequencer lights are not there anymore. Let's put 2. Right now you can see it on the screen also on Koala Sampler. The sequencer for the sampler is sequencing Koala Sampler. Imagine the possibilities. And one important addition to all these around Koala Sampler, thanks to the way the sound card on Seqtrak works, every sound coming from Koala Sampler or whatever app you want to use will pass through the effects chain of Seqtrak. And I'm talking about filters, equalizers, performance effects, master compressor, and 5-band equalizer. Incredible. Tip number 14. Run Koala patterns from Seqtrak. This one should be obvious after the previous one. You can map the same 7 sample keys on the sampler channel to Koala Sampler patterns. You can run all of them manually whenever you want those patterns using these keys. And it's really simple. As I said, it's really obvious, but we're gonna map these keys to patterns. To do that, you just need to go back to Settings, MIDI, Map MIDI, and let's go to Sequence, and let's do it in the same order. And when I press Done, I don't need to create a loop or anything right now in the patterns. Just to cut it short, I can just show you the functionality. As you know, when I press play, Seqtrak will also make Koala Sampler play. Look what happens. Koala Sampler is playing, Seqtrak is playing, and I can simply change patterns however I want and whenever I want. And since you're going to change them manually, you don't need to deal with quantize or anything like that. Probably it's better for performances if you do it this way. But of course, you can do whatever you want around it. Now you have 7 full patterns that you can trigger from Seqtrak. And again, like I mentioned a few times already, imagine the possibilities. This brings us to one of the last tips, which is tip 15, recording patterns with Seqtrak. It's actually just a simple workaround. I will demonstrate how it behaves and what you might want to do instead. As you know, Seqtrak has a record button right here next to the synth keys, but unfortunately this cannot be mapped as a record button using MIDI Learn in Koala, and I believe it's the same for other apps as well. So you need to use the on-screen record button to record patterns. But look what happens when I do that. Playhead is stuck, and this is because Koala wants to record and play at the same time, but Seqtrak is master. What you need to do after pressing record, you need to press play, so recording starts. But when you do that, it actually doesn't give you a count in. To work around that, you can press play first and then click record. Then you can start creating pattern. This is basically how you do it. First, press play, then record to get the count in. Very simple. Quick tip, as I mentioned in the beginning, Koala Sampler has all 16 MIDI channels. Seqtrak has 11 channels. There are some things that you might need to change, especially if you don't want to send MIDI information back to Koala. This is really important if you are using the keyboard mode. For instance, you might want to create a pattern using the keys on Koala Sampler. If you don't change your MIDI channels, if you leave it to all, those MIDI information with the keyboard that you just played in will be sent to Seqtrak, which will also make all sorts of sounds depending on which channel it goes. Since this has 11 channels, you can simply set the MIDI channels. Instead of all, you can say keyboard mode MIDI channel to 16. It's simple as that. Now, whatever you play here, let's say I'm gonna play this one. This sounds, you will hear it here, you will be able to record it on Koala Sampler, but this MIDI information will not be sent to Seqtrak because we set it to a channel that doesn't exist on Seqtrak. So don't forget to set your MIDI channels to something after 11. I prefer to set it to 16. And speaking of 16, here is the last tip for today. Tip 16, get around the 16-second sample limit with the oldest trick in the book. 16, 16, 16. I hope this doesn't stand for something ominous. Anyway, tip 16. As you know, Seqtrak has 16 seconds of sample limit. But this problem existed decades ago before Seqtrak, and it's been solved already decades ago before Seqtrak. You cannot do this on Seqtrak, unfortunately. If you could, it wouldn't have been a limitation. you need Koala Sampler. Luckily, it's very convenient to use. We are already connected. Basically, the oldest trick in the book, as I mentioned, what you need to do is to pitch up your sample, which will make your sample faster. And then you record that sample into Seqtrak and then pitch it down again. For instance, let's say you want to sample something 60 seconds. What you can do is to pitch it twice, then it's going to turn into 15 seconds. I hope I'm doing the math right. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might not be entirely true, but it's something like that. So let's say you have 60 seconds of sample. You have 16-second sample limit. Pitch that sample up twice all the way, and then you can go to the Seqtrak app to pitch it down 24 semitones, which will extend it to 60 seconds. It's kind of surprising that it works, but at the same time, is it really surprising? This problem, as I mentioned, has been solved decades ago. Let me show you how it's done. Hopefully, it's not gonna give me any copyright problems. Let's start the sample. It's gonna be a long recording because I wanna record at least 50 seconds for this to make any sense. But at least it's a nice jazzy tune. It's quite the lo-fi vibe. Okay, I think this is enough. Let's maximize this window, get rid of the other one, edit the sample. Let's trim the silence. Somewhere around here we got that percussion coming here. I think this is pretty much what I need. Let's cut the volume down a little bit. Okay, this seems to be the entire sample. I'm gonna crop it like this. Now I'm gonna pitch it, but just to make sure that you are pitching it correctly, what you can do in Koala Sampler is to edit and pitch, which will give you this 12 semitones. Enter. Now I know that I pitch it up 1 octave, which is gonna sound really funny. Now this is basically twice the speed. I copied it to another pad and I'm gonna bounce this actually to be able to pitch it one more time. Edit, pitch, 12 once again, just to get the maximum precision out of it. Okay, edit, tools, bounce once again. Let's disable the keyboard mode. This is my sample. I enabled one shot. So what you need to do is, in this case, to start record sample and also play the sample at the same time. You're gonna get 1 bar count, so it's kind of easy. But also you can start a little later to precisely adjust the sample length. We will need to use the Seqtrak app to be able to do this anyway. So let's do it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Actually, I didn't need to press and hold. I set it to 1 shot already. But anyway. So let's see how it sounds now. Bad. It sounds really bad. But this is the trick. Since we pitched it up twice by 12 semitones, so 24 semitones in total, which is the maximum amount you can pitch down in the Seqtrak app. Let's see what it's gonna turn into. Let's go to Sampler, Sample 1, and start point seems quite accurate. I'm gonna pitch it down to 24. Yeah, there's a little bit delay in the beginning. Let's see if we can fix it. Yeah, this seems better. I think you can already see that pitching it down 24 semitones brought it back to its original tone. But let's see how is the length now. . is gonna be a little long. I think we already passed the 16 seconds limit, so probably this is already good enough proof that it works. Yeah, I think this is enough. It's been more than 16 seconds. See how easy that was. So if you already have your iPad or smartphone connected, Seqtrak works incredibly well with Koala Sampler. And also, because of this pitching up and down action, your sample might get some grit and texture, which is a must-have for lo-fi. So this was all 16 tips that I prepared for you. I just have a few notes left for you. We can call it the bonus round. One of them I think is particularly interesting and the rest is just a reminder. Let me show you the interesting part. I got back to one of my favorite apps, Grooverider, which is an incredible groovebox by itself. Maybe I will do a video on that too. Let me know if you're interested in the comments. The amazing thing about Grooverider is that it has 16 patterns that you can do whatever you want with, and all these 16 patterns are automatically assigned a MIDI channel, which means as long as we are connected, I can send any kind of MIDI data from Seqtrak and use it as a sequencer to sequence track on Grooverider. In this case, I know that synth track is 8 and MIDI channel 9 and DX is 10. So let's go to part 8 in this case. And again, as I mentioned previously, to be able to use it only as a sequencer, because in this case, it's actually pretty capable sequencer. I just need to turn the volume all the way down. So when I press this, it doesn't do anything. And now let's add a melodic element to that. And from the presets, I'm going to choose, let's go with a sound font instead to get a piano sound. I can still send chord mode MIDI data from this synth. It sends the MIDI data. So basically, I replace my synth tracks with a software synth. So basically, if you turn down the volume all the way, you can use Seqtrak, whichever section you want. Probably you would want to do it with synths. You can use it as a sequencer for soft synths on your iPad or your laptop or your mobile phone or whatever device you want to use it with, only using the USB-C connection. As I mentioned previously a few more times in the video, it's incredible. I really like this. But anyway, let's get rid of the iPad super quick. You can also see your sound input levels. So if you press record sample and volume up, we just switch to the volume input metering mode, which I will need to play something on the input, again on the USB-C, to see the volume level. Probably you can reduce the volume down a little bit. It's going to be automatically normalized anyway. No need to maximize your input. As you can see, if I change the volume level here, you can see it on the metering that I get different values. Quite handy. For some reason, I cannot adjust the volume using the iPad volume slider, but I think it's a really specific issue to iPad, not necessarily on Seqtrak. But if you are, for instance, using an external audio device, like it could have been a vinyl, it could have been a cassette player, or simply another synthesizer that you want to sample in using the audio in, this is one way that you can see how loud is your signal in a really basic way. So that's it. All the tips are here. I hope that these 16 tips will be useful and at least some of them will help you out next time you are jamming with Seqtrak. If I missed anything or if you have any suggestions or questions, please drop them in the comments and I will answer each and every one of you. As always, thank you for watching and take care. See you on the next one.